We are live.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the show. Sorry we're a little late. We had some technical trouble there. As you can see, Tracy's sitting there waiting for everything to happen for her. She's not going to say a word until I tell her to. Ready? 1, 2, 3, go.
Hi, everyone. We're always glad to answer your questions. And one of the most common questions we get is, how do you make creamed honey? So I'm going to be filling up the creamer while Dennis is going to explain to us exactly how you make the cream process and what the difference is between just regular honey that crystallizes on its own and the creamed honey. Okay, so Dennis, I'll let you have at her. Could you start explaining our process on getting a creamer going?
All right, so creamed honey has been around for decades. It's basically just soft honey. And we call it creamed, or you can call it whipped. Some people call it white honey. But it's basically to keep the granulation that happens so that it doesn't go hard. As Tracy's showing you right there, there's a container of creamed honey. You can see the honey is just free flowing, no problem, all good to go. So that's creamed honey, whipped or whatever. And then the hard honey doesn't move. It's crystallized, it's hard, you have to dig it out, and that's fine too in its own way. But if you want to spread it on peanut butter or use it in a recipe, the creamed honey really is the better one. The plain honey, as we call it, is just as good too. It's just harder to manipulate. Now, what we do to make creamed honey is we follow what we call the DICE method. DYCE. It was invented by a guy back in like the 60s, I guess, or formalized back on by a guy in the 60s called Mr. Dice. And that's the one that I found that matched up with what I saw Grandpa doing on the farm where I grew up with the bees and learning about honey and everything. I don't think he had it really planned out or did it that way. It's just the way he was taught to do it and the way he did it and the way Grandma did it and the way everybody kind of did it in our family. But it is the formal method that this Mr. Dice came up with. And basically what it is, I'll give you the gist of it overall, is it's some granulated honey, usually already creamed honey, with a certain portion of that, and a whole lot of liquid honey, as you can see Tracy pouring into the creamer there right now, to make up the whole batch. And then you sit there and mix it for a long time. So there's a couple of big important parts of the DICE method that you have to follow. One is the ratio. And the ratio is roughly 12% creamed honey inside that silver container, the creaming machine that we got, to the balance of liquid honey. So it's basically in that container we put a 7-kilogram pail of creamed honey, and then we fill it up with the rest with all liquid honey off of a melted barrel that we had to take out of storage and reliquefy.
So do we melt the barrel, Dennis, and put it straight in there into the creamer?
Well, we do melt the barrel, as you know, but we're very careful about how we do it. We do have a heater band that we put on there, and I keep it at a certain temperature, and it takes a couple, 3-4 days in the end to finally get the whole barrel melted. But we melt just the little parts that we need to make up the creamed honey. So about 1/3 of a 650-pound barrel goes into one of those creamers, or sorry, 2 of those creamers, and that makes up a batch for us. And then we put the heater band down lower and the honey on the barrel, and we melt the next third and the next third until the whole barrel's done. And it takes a good solid week in between, because the next step that's critical is you hold the temperature, that room that Tracy's in, we hold that temperature at roughly 17 degrees. That helps the honey to regranulate and a controlled temperature, and then The third thing is that creamer, that's the reason why we bought it, is it sits there and it mixes the honey, liquid and creamed honey, every hour for 15 minutes over 5 days, roughly 4 or 5 days. And at the end of that 5 days of mixing every hour for 15 minutes, we have a nice batch of soft creamed honey like Tracy showed you earlier.
Yeah, so
And
what
that
Ashley
makes
is
our
asking
creamed
is
honey.
when we have it melted, as Dennis said, it goes into the packaging pail first through another
Oh,
strainer,
yeah.
and we let it cool. We don't put hot honey that we just melt. Well, it's not extremely hot, as Dennis said, it's a slow temperature, but we don't put it immediately hot from the barrel into the packaging pail. We let it cool first.
Yeah.
Sorry, Dennis, I thought.
No, that's a good point. We let it cool down to the 17-degree Celsius room temperature that we keep that room at to make the honey. That's what you see Tracy tapping and filling the blue containers with, is room temperature honey that's at least 17 degrees, not much higher than that,
Yeah.
so that it can mix with the honey really well and give
And
us a nice batch of honey.
And it's a thicker honey. If this was hotter honey, I'd have to be controlling in the lever because it's very runny and it just comes out like water. Whereas now it's cooled down, so it's a nice thicker cold honey, melted honey still,
Yeah.
but cool.
Yeah. The heater band, one of the biggest problems a lot of people have, and I'm always after Tracy on this, is she heats the honey. Everybody tends to heat the honey really fast. One of the tricks I learned from the back in the day is you go slow. You don't have to heat the honey right away and get it all done immediately. If you go slow, you don't burn the honey. Whereas if you try and do it really fast, you can end up actually burning the honey and altering the flavor profile and the color of it quite significantly. Anytime you add heat to honey to re-liquefy it, you're actually changing the color gradation of it. Can be quite a bit. It darkens the honey, and that just shows you how it can actually start to burn the honey. But we don't do it. We do it over a 24-hour period. And if you were to do the whole barrel in one big shot, you would probably get done in about 4 days to get the all of that honey back to liquid form. We store the barrels just like every other beekeeper. We store the honey in barrels over the winter. And every time we need to package some new stuff, we re-liquefy a barrel over about a week as we empty it and stuff like that. And within a couple of weeks, we're back at having zero liquid honey and have to re-liquefy another barrel. So depending on how much we sell and what time of the season, that's how often we re-liquefy a barrel.
Mm-hmm. So right now, I had enough in here to start this creamer and the other one, and I'll have extra. And so that extra is going to be just my plain wildflower honey that will be packaged into glass jars for the next market.
Yeah, that packaging packaging barrel is big enough that it can actually hold 2/3 to 3/4 of a whole barrel when we really liquefy a barrel.
Yeah, you don't ever want to leave honey in here. If I had filled up my 2 creamers and I still had some honey, with the room being cold, it wouldn't just thicken the honey, but the honey would actually start to crystallize in the packaging pail, and then that's a pain in the butt.
It's not jacketed to keep the honey in liquid form because I don't want to discolor the honey whenever it's in that.
Yeah.
So yeah, the cold temperature can actually re-solidify that honey in there, and then when that happens, as Tracy knows, we've both done it. It makes quite a hard trip to get all that honey out of that packaging pail.
Yeah.
So
this is my last one here.
So now she's got the
else?
liquid honey up to basically where the top red part there is. As you can see on the creaming
right here.
machine. Somewhere up there is where she's got the liquid honey up to, with the 7 kilogram pail of creamed honey that was already in there. So now she's got to just close the lid.
Well, that's my problem. I didn't get a container for this, so I'll just grab something. I just thought of that. I was like, darn it, I have to get this out of here because I was doing 2 pictures at a time. This was just to speed it up a little bit, but now I've got to get this washed, and the sink's across the room.
For those of you who are thinking about tools that you might want to get, Those are pail dipper racks I got from a local supplier, Bee Made, out of Spruce Grove, that they hold the pails, or as you can see, the jugs, so that you can pour and drip. They're dripping racks. And it's a nice and convenient little tool to have, because then you can turn your back and leave something drip all its honey out over time, and you don't have to worry about something falling in. And
So
the
as
first time I did
Dennis,
it was a piece of wood.
yeah, or we just stand there holding it and that gets hard
Yeah,
on the arms. So anyway,
yeah.
as Dennis said, I'm going to shut the lid. There's a little button that's going to connect with this metal panel there. And we just put a bit of weight just so that the lid doesn't pop open. Right now we don't have bugs, it's winter time, but just so that the lid is nice and sealed tight. And then I just hit the start button up there and it starts spinning it, paddling it all around.
Program.
There's 2 sets of paddles. Yeah, the program.
Yeah.
And do you want to talk about how long that works for, Dennis? How long that runs?
So now that she's got the power on and the lid stays closed, because there is a safety latch there if it accidentally opens. That's the other reason why we put weight on there, is to make sure that the program will continue to run. We do have a stop and an emergency stop and things like that. It's a neat little machine that I found. It's out of a company out of Poland, and when I remember the name, I'll have to remember to tell you guys. Is it on the
Lyson?
panel? Lyson, yes.
Lyson from,
Yeah,
yeah,
Lyson out of
Germany
Poland.
or Poland. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a nice machine that they put together. It's got an automatic timer. It's got programming. It's got backup safety features. It's got a slow gearbox, all that stuff. And it turns on immediately, as you heard there, and runs. It'll run for about 15 minutes. There's no about. It runs for 15 minutes. And at the end of 15 minutes, it stops. And then the timer kicks in. And for an hour, it sits for an hour. And then an hour later, it'll start again and turn for 15 minutes again. And it'll do that same, and it'll repeat that every hour, every day for up to 100 hours or 99 hours. And then at the end of that 99 hours, we come along and we tap the bottom of the creamer and take all the creamed honey out, and it's all good, ready to eat. And then we package it all up depending on what we want to put it into.
Yep. So there's usually what we put it in is blue tubs, the 500-gram tubs and the 1 kg tubs, blue tubs, so that it's squishy, so customers can tell that it's creamy. And then in the glass jars, we put the regular runny honey so that they can see it is either liquidy, runny in the jar, and or if it's crystallized, because some people prefer it one way or the other. And you can make crystallized honey runny again just by putting it in the jar in a hot water bath.
And we do pails. We go as high as a 2.5 gallon pail. We do 3 kilogram, 5 kilogram, 7 kilogram, and 15 kilogram pails. Just to let everyone know what our repertoire is for our inventory for creamed honey. So that's how we do creamed honey, and that's how you generally do creamed honey. If you want to do creamed honey at home on your own, you can. But when you use your mixer, well, your mixer can be broken very easily because they're not made to mix honey. Honey is very thick usually when it starts to get there. You can heat the honey, as Tracy said, in a liquid bath. Put your container in a liquid bath, and that'll soften it. And then if you take your hand drill or your countertop mixer, you could put the honey in that and then mix it, and it'll make creamed honey. But that's for very small batch creamed honey, and it can be very hard on the machinery. That kitchen craft machinery usually doesn't take that very well. I broke one mixer already trying to do a small batch for somebody. I don't recommend it.
I just turned it off just because of the noise from it, so in case that was affecting the video. But you can control turning it on. We also let it run for how long, Dennis? You said it was 99 hours, which is approximately
It's programmed to run
days.
99 hours. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sometimes
so
we do extend that a little
packaging.
bit, but I generally follow that program. We generally go 99 hours. Sometimes we'll go a couple days longer because of the way, say it's 35 degrees outside and the inside of the shop is 30 degrees. It's a little hot. We try to control that temperature to keep it at 17 degrees. So if it's higher than that, then it takes a little bit more, a day or two more to make some
Yeah,
good
so you
cream
can
honey
have
and finish it off.
thick creamed honey, which is when it's colder. Like say my honey that I just put in here was thicker honey, as well as if the room is cold, then you get a thicker creamed honey. And then if you've got a hotter room or your honey was a little bit too warm that you were putting in here, you get a runny creamed honey. So we get that question asked of us sometimes too. Like last time I bought from you, it was, you know, really thick, and now this time it was more on the runny side. So it's still creamed honey. It's just two different consistencies. Anyway, was there anything else about creaming, Dennis?
I did see that there was somebody there with a question. Did Patrice?
I was just asking anybody in chat if they had questions. That's all. That's
okay.
what that message popped up was.
Okay.
So yeah, if anybody's got any questions, just put it in the chat, and then we'll be glad to answer your questions on that and go from there.
Yeah, so creaming is pretty easy. There wasn't a heck of a lot to show you. We'd have to move the camera like my cooking videos I do, and we decided just to stay stationary, so you're not seeing the barrel that's got a melting band on. You're not seeing the second creamer that I'm actually packaging from right now. There's not much.
Well, Tracy, why don't you
just
lift your phone now that we're done there and do it like a selfie? Hold it up and show people. No? Okay.
Well, yeah, no, it's okay. So what the other question is that we're always asked is, what exactly are you doing in the winter months as a beekeeper? So obviously we're still melting honey, we're still packaging honey, we're still labeling honey, we're still cleaning up. I mean, I still have candle molds on the counter from Christmas because I've just been lazy and haven't got around to that project yet. It wasn't on the priority list. Just things like you're doing cleaning, you're doing a lot of reading if you're a new beekeeper, or even just as a hobby, reading about bees, and also repairing things in the workshop. It's extremely cold in our shop because we put up these walls that we're not quite finished doing here to keep just this area, the working area, warmer, and didn't have to pay to heat the whole entire back shop. So the back shop work area is cold. So just now we're starting to, with it Chinooking outside, being able to come back here and work a little bit more comfortably. As you can see, Dennis isn't wearing mitts and a winter coat back in the back anymore. So that's going to lead us into the other part of what we do.
Well, that's the thing. Usually up until the end of February, yeah, you were doing exactly what you just said, Tracy. We're just wasting time waiting and stuff like that. March, February, near the end of February and into March is usually when I get my first chance to go and take a look at the inside of the beehives to see if they're still alive. However, it hasn't been warm enough here yet. Now, a lot of people will do that, and you'll find as a new person, you're going to be tempted to go into the beehive even when it's +5 degrees outside. Don't do it. That is still too cold. You can still go and take a look to see if you have activity in the hive. If you hear any buzzing, if you see any bees flying out, because at +5 degrees, you will get some that will fly out to go for a cleansing flight and go poop. Usually they die as soon as they land on the snow, but so you can take a close look and see if you see any activity. But don't let the temptation to open your hive get to you until it hits at least +10 degrees outside. Because then at +10, when you open the hive and you release all that heat out into the atmosphere, it gives them time, once you put the lid back on, it gives the beehive time to actually rebuild that heat envelope so that by that night, they might survive until the next day and then build up and keep on going. So be very careful to make sure it's not windy and taking all that heat away. Don't open them for long, things like that. You want to make sure and open the lid, take a look. Oh, I see some bees moving around. Okay, close the lid, walk away. If they're dead, it's not going to do anything. They're dead already. If they're alive, you can take a look and see if there's activity. If you see enough food, in which case you know that if there's not enough food, you can maybe do something, but we can talk about that on another trip. And I'm hoping that sometime in the next couple of weeks, I'm going to get that +10 degree weather to actually go out and look inside the hives. I saw someone asked a question of where we are. We are in northern Alberta. Excuse me. We are up near the county. We're in the county of Northern Sunrise, up near Peace River, Alberta. So we're about 6 hours north of Edmonton, 5.5, I think is what it takes to get to our house. And the bees are outside. I didn't wrap them last fall. I didn't put them inside. And I did see bees flying all over the place going for cleansing flights. So I think I do have some live hives. So, but I haven't opened them yet because, yeah, the weather hasn't been. I think I had 1/2 of an hour one day a few days ago where it was plus 10 degrees. That's too short of a time to take a good look inside of one hive in the kind of, I want a plus 10 degrees solid for the entire day. And then I'll
So we
take a
keep
look
our
inside.
bees close to our where we live. So we do occasionally in the winter see bees on the snow dead, because when we talked about that in the previous video, that the snow is cold and they die because of touching the cold when they're getting a drink off the snow, off the water that's melted. So yeah, when he says a cleansing flight, that's what I was getting at, sorry, is they're flying to poop. They don't poop in the hive, they fly to do that. So they're active all winter long. They're not just asleep like a bear.
In fact, if they poop inside the hive, that tells me that there's likely a disease in there like nosema.
Mm-hmm.
They don't like to die in the hive. They don't like to poop in the hive. They like to keep their house clean. They're a very clean animal.
Yeah. So do we have time, Dennis, to show them maybe a little bit of assembling, like what we do in the shop in the winter to get ready for spring? Like we scrape frames, we tidy up, things like that, but we also build and paint. Well, if it's warm enough, we can paint boxes. Did you want to show that?
Yeah, I can show one build real quick here. Let's see. Okay, so I'm going to be a little hard to see, but it's going to be in the back here.
Mm-hmm.
And what I did is I'm going to build one of my wood boxes that I usually reserve for when kids come out to the farm to do a tour and see if they want to build it. So I'm going to build one of those. This year, though, we're switching, as Tracy knows, we're switching over to styrofoam. So that will help them survive in the winter more. And apparently it also helps them keep the inside of the hive cool. Because we do have a month now in the last few years, we've noticed, roughly July, where we get plus 30, 35, 40 degree weather for the entire month. And it actually hurts the bees quite a bit. So we want them to keep cool. One of the reasons why we put them in our backyard is because we have a pond next to us real quick that the bees can fly like 5 seconds and get some water and take it in and dehydrate it and cool the hive. So this year.
Would the styrofoam be lighter than the wood also?
Yep, the styrofoam will be lighter, so it'll be easier on our backs. And I also bought the 3/4 depth size for the honey side of being beekeepers, and we're going to get full. So we're going to have full depth styrofoam for the brood boxes and 3/4 depth styrofoam for the honey boxes. So we're going to build that, and that's one of the things we're going to build this year and all that stuff. And just to show you.
So when Dennis says brood, that's the babies. So that's the bottom 1 to 2 boxes. And then there's a queen excluder, so the queen cannot go any higher and lay eggs. And then we have the honey boxes on top, which are also called supers, just so you've got some terminology there. Anyway, go ahead, Dennis.
This is what I built up until now. It's the standard white pine. There's no real R value to it, but the bees like it. And they coat the inside, and it's a great box overall in general. It's very traditional. Everybody has them or has had them, or I grew up with them and everything like that. And as you can see, the different size, there we go in the camera. That's a full depth length from here all the way down to there. That's what the boxes are. And I do all my brood chambers like that.
Mm-hmm. So Dennis is talking. Oh, sorry, Dennis.
And then here's the new one that we're going to try this year. It's from a company out of Australia called HIVE IQ. Very nicely built, I can tell you right now, looking at them. So I can't wait to try and assemble them and see how they go. And it's lots lighter than the other one, about half the weight, and it's a bigger size than what this one is. So I'm looking forward to trying these out. The only thing I got to figure out is paint. So, but that's going to be one of the days I'm going to maybe put a video together showing how we built these styrofoam boxes so that people can see what we're switching to.
And maybe the
this would have an
styrofoam
R
doesn't have
value
to
that
be
would be worth it.
painted.
I would still want to paint it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I do generally run. I saw someone made a comment there, but we do generally run double deep, 2 full depth brood boxes on the bottom to make a double chamber. I have not. I see someone asking about wax dipping them. I have not wax dip them. I know a lot of people who do and swear by it. I think it's not a bad idea. I just haven't got the equipment to do it, or I've never made an agreement with someone to do it. I usually paint the outside and then coat the inside of the wood with propolis that the bees coat it with and stuff like that to keep it right. You can go without paint, but you do have to remember these are out in the elements. So when it's raining, when it's anything hot, they will deteriorate as well. So that's why a lot of people move from the not doing anything with the wood to where they went to wax dipping, because the wax dipping, if done right, can protect the boxes. I've seen boxes at my uncle's farm where I grew up 40 years ago, 50 years ago. We made them 50 years ago, and they're still in good shape and still being used to this day. He doesn't wax dip all of them, I don't think, anymore. But yeah, wax dipping can be an option. So this is an end. I'm going to put this down here on the bottom. Here's a side one. I'm going to put that together with that one.
There's some notches already in both pieces of wood that he's just sliding in together.
Oh, someone cut this one wrong.
Okay, so some more technical difficulty.
Yeah, I'm going to have to get another one.
Okay, well, while he's finding another piece, I'm going to ask him a question. Has it always been these wooden boxes for beekeeping?
Up until now, pretty much. I don't think styrofoam came in about, a decade, 20 years ago. People started swearing by, they started building with styrofoam. Some people have tried other different kinds, but we've always come back to wood to do it. Oh my goodness. The jig didn't work too well on this one, dear.
Anyway, what I actually meant by the question was prior to the styrofoam, prior to the wooden boxes, how did beekeepers beekeep? Because there's been beekeeping going on for generations and generations.
You're looking to show people the skep.
Yeah, yeah. So what's this?
And that's kind of funny because, yeah, that's a skep. And it's exactly like, I laugh at that because I remember when I was a kid, my grandfather had some of those around. We weren't using them professionally, but we did have some around. And I remember seeing a lot of history about those skeps where people would use them for themselves to have on their farm, for themselves to make their own honey.
And I'll scoop it out.
And I've been meaning to build my own skep and have one around for myself to play with. I've just never done it. My grandfather, we used to, when he first moved from Quebec to, oh my goodness, I'm going to have a hard time with these boxes.
Okay, so why don't we talk then? And since we're not building, then we're having a bit of difficulty. So
okay, well, it's not hard to do because what you do is you see the fingers on the end, you put them together, and then you put a nail in each one. I put glue in between them to help seal and to help hold everything in. And then you do the same thing on the other side, and then you put it all together and you got a box.
Ta-da!
I don't know why the jigs are not working. We must have had a bad couple of hours on the jig.
So yeah,
Holy.
In ancient time, there's baked clay or mud pots that were found like in Egypt. There's been, beehives found in, like people deliberately had log ones made out of logs.
Yeah, I was just going to say the most famous ones that a lot of people think of are the ones that were made excuse me, using hollow logs.
Mm-hmm.
People
And
used
so
to
the
keep those
bees
around.
have bee spacing. Did you want to talk about the bee spacing, Dennis? How that's kind
Well,
of
the
why
bee
the
spacing
boxes.
is really unique because way back in the day, people used to make their own hives out of anything, and they would make boxes and hollow logs. They would cut the logs up and have the bees in there. And along came a certain famous person. I think it was Brother Adam, out of the monastery out of England. He started doing actual studies of just why the bees were making the comb and the hives and the way they did. And he discovered that the spacing that you can see there in between the frames is 3/8 of an inch, give or take 1/1000th of an inch. The bees were very accurate. And as you can see in this picture, which is blown up a little bit, the bees are very accurate because they walk in between that space. That bee space is what he studied and what he found to be very accurate. And he measured all the hives, or as close as he could anyway, and found out that, hey, guess what? The boxes that we make, that was made because he measured the volume inside that the bees liked to have, and they would actually make that hive like this. So that space you see in the box here where my head is, that is actually very accurately at that, was it 40 liters, Tracy, did we read in the book?
37 liters is what
37 liters, yeah.
in our
so
workshops.
That's why they built these boxes with this certain sizing, so that the inside here, the bees are very comfortable with the amount that's there. And then we put the frames in here with that 3/8 spacing in between, so that the bees control that spacing and they don't build. I had a young gentleman who I was tutoring a little bit in bees, and he disappeared on me, and he failed to listen to my advice about making sure to put a guide frame to make sure that the bees would go a certain direction. And a year later, he came to me because he had a bit of a problem. Because he failed to put that guide in, the bees had built the frames and the honeycomb in every direction, and he was wondering if there was anything he could do to harvest that honey. Unfortunately, once the bees put in all that stuff and built that spacing of 3/8 in between all the curls and everything, the only thing he could do was take everything out and squish it in a press to get his honey out.
Happened the old way. You'd have to reach in and grab everything, the wax, the bees, the honey out. Dennis and I actually came across a black and white video where the men were smoking cigars, and they would, and that was their smoke gun, was them.
One second.
Am I back?
There
we go. More technical difficulties.
So, one second. One of the phones is disconnected, and the phone that's disconnected is the phone that is attached to Queen Bee's earpiece.
So yeah, for some reason, Mom's phone decided to drop. So it's got nothing there, and I can't pick it up again. So I came over here.
You can talk about swarming again, why we put more boxes on.
I thought we were talking about bee space.
Yeah, you were by yourself, and I couldn't hear you.
Anyway, so back again. So yeah, what you do with the skeps is you would take it, hold it, put some smoke right here to keep them calm, and then you would reach in with your hand, grab all of the wax and everything out, and put it in a pail down here, and let the bees fly back in to make their hive again back in the same skep, and then you would squish all that honey down in that pail to make your honey and all the larvae and everything. So anyway, there we go. That's a little bit of what we wanted to do.
Yes, the size, dimension, why a bee box.
And that's how they came up with why the bee boxes are made the way they are now with the Langstroth dimensions, the sizes for the Langstroth boxes, which is the square box that I use.
Do we have a bit of time to talk about swarming on there, or why bees swarm is another question another time?
So if anybody has a question, is there any questions, Patrice? Because I do see something that says chat.
No, no questions in the chat. I think that's it for today then.
I
You
think
guys
we're
weren't having
gonna.
any fun, and we didn't have any other questions in the chat for a few viewers tuning in live right now.
Because yeah, I'm worried that we're gonna lose my phone now, and
Well, let us know what we're doing next time and where we can find more, and we'll see you then, I guess.
when's the next time?
March 6th, and it is swarming spring.
So next time we're gonna have the next live stream is gonna be on March 6th at 2 o'clock, and we're gonna hopefully by then have some nice weather. And March is usually when I start getting angsty and want to get out in the bees. So we're gonna start talking about what we're gonna do when the weather goes nice and when we can actually get inside the hive and take a look and see how many beehives we have survived the winter and how many bees and how healthy they are and all that wonderful stuff. All right, so hopefully we see some more of you on next time. And as always, we're always available. I'm always checking out the school. Send me a message, ask a question anytime you want to.
Cool. That's school.com/bees. You can find us at Be Happy in the community. Ask a question anytime and let us know what you want to see here on the live stream next. Thanks for tuning in, guys.
Thanks, Patrice.